Well, speaking of creative things, Uncle Dave is apparently making stuff up again. So he's not so much making stuff up, he's making words and phrases in combinations with each other at this point that really cover pretty much every possible occurrence and vaguely allude to things that he has no details on in such a way that you get more confused. And then there's the level of the writing where your brain doesn't process that many words without a period or a comma or anything, and so you kind of just go along with it. So we've come up with another of our segments that, Brian, that we have to start calling Daveplaining, because this is the way that Dave explains things. Have I explained that well?
Either yes or no. I'm not exactly sure. You kind of Dave explained it to me. So we'll see how this goes.
Well, see.
What issue are we talking about specifically that Dave?
Well, now in between the last program we did and now, Dave had put out some details on what he believed was the relationship between the WWE and the independent promoters that are using the wrestlers that are under the WWE ID banner. And what does that stand for again? Help me. The ID part of it. Do you even remember?
Let me check
it's something development, image development. I don't fucking know. But basically, they reported some time back that the WWE is starting to find people that they, on the independent scene, that they believe they don't want to put under contract now. They don't want to bring into the whole training system, but there may be some upside. There may be some potential. So they're going to throw them a bone, as the promoters used to say. They're going to give them a little bonus just to, I'm sure the WWE has some right of first refusal.
Independent development.
Okay. So in exchange for, looky here, consult us about anything major. Don't do anything stupid. And we'll send you a check, and we've got the right to bring you into the system before you would go anywhere else because we're investing in you. That type of deal, right? And you may know more about this from what was on Twitter, but the story then was that David explained this intricate, deal that they were needed to do to be the ID people with the promoters. And then when somebody called him on it, he deleted that. And now apparently this week he's saying, well, he deleted that story last week because it wasn't supposed to be out last week. He was working on it. It was supposed to be in this week's issue. But apparently he broke this story and then deleted it, and it became a thing. This is what people were talking about. Is this correct?
Yeah, there was something, because again, it all happened pretty quickly, and I think we were actually in the middle of recording, if not right after our recording. But Dave put in the Observer, which comes out on Friday, what he said was the protocol for WWE ID wrestlers and the promotions that work with them, and specifically about Gabe Sapolsky delivering finished scripts and dictating how the WWE ID performers would be used or booked. And that was kind of shot down pretty quickly by a few people. I have a tweet here from Brett Lauderdale. That's the promoter of GCW. They work with WWE. I guess they're part of this ID program.
Oh, good Lord. Even the garbage folks now. Have they no shame? Is it all about profit?
My experience with WWE ID, Gabe doesn't put the matches together. I've never seen or heard of a script. We are allowed to push WWE ID on talent announcements, but we don't. Not aware of any travel stipend or travel share, but that would be cool. So that is a response, and I believe Matt Farmer, who has a promotion, Defy, I believe is the name of it. He's a wrestling historian. He also very respectfully said Dave was wrong about this. And then if you got the Observer that morning, you had it in it. If you downloaded the Observer later that day, it was out of it. He just deleted that section and never put a correction. And a lot of people have been jumping on Dave for doing that over the last year and a half, 2 years. Remember, he put up a thing on his message board saying, here's an internal document, or I saw an internal document. And it was actually just some fan guessing on Reddit.
Yeah.
And he never retracted it. He never said, I got that wrong. There's been a few different cases of this where, Dave still gets things right. There are people now think he gets everything wrong because there's definitely people pushing that narrative. He does get things right, but he also, more than ever before, reports half the story or doesn't get the full story.
Well, or gets excited. And by the way, now sooner or later, even a blind squirrel finds a nut. Now we know that, right? No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, Dave's right and wrong and indifferent like everybody else, but at the same point, I'm just afraid that the decline that Father Time brings to us all. Because can I just? I don't want to misrepresent what Dave meant, so I want to read his explanation so we're crystal clear.
This is so the New Observer?
Everybody,
he put something in this
the
week's?
Okay. Yes, there's something in this week's Observer that I've been sent from the front office in Lincoln, Nebraska. And this is Dave's own words, so we'll clear this whole matter up, right? That we've been talking about and guessing. We're just going to go right to the source here. He says, hold on, because now the print is so small. Regarding the note last week that applied to WWE ID showcase matches involving WWE ID wrestlers as well as these matches. Basically, WWE was trying to push the idea to indie promoters of doing WWE ID showcase matches, which the promotion would then promote through social media involving wrestlers under contract. For these matches, Gabe Sapolsky of WWE puts the matches together and scripts them for the promoters. The promoters are in charge of paying the talent. In the case of these shows, the promotion can stream the shows and own the footage, but WWE has the right to use the footage in any way it wants. This was incorrectly put in the last issue, as the story was to be in this issue, but wasn't moved, and the issue had already been put up by that time.
Wait, hold on, stop there. So he's saying that for whatever reason, the story intended for this issue somehow got into the middle of the text of the last issue?
Yes, and now he's repeated in trying to explain what he's explaining and correcting. He's repeated the goddamn incorrect story in such long, drawn-out detail that now you think that this is a correction, that he's given you the correction, right? But no, that's what he's about to correct. Hold on now. See, we're not done. This was incorrectly put in the last issue as the story was to be in this issue, but wasn't moved, and the issue had already been put up by that time. WWE ID wrestlers are under no restrictions as far as working on independent shows, and those matches can be booked and put together by the promoter, and they can even work against AEW talent. But WWE will not promote those appearances. Promoters can advertise the talent as WWE ID talent. WWE pays the ID talent a stipend or salary that they could use to better their nutrition and to help better their nutrition. And to help with travel costs to put them on food. And to help with travel costs to get bookings, training, etc. One promoter noted they've had some ID talent offer to get themselves to their company's shows, but the promotion has no restriction as far as finishes or who they work with, but WWE won't promote these matches. When the champions are established, and the idea is that they would be working indie shows and perhaps evolve, WWE would have control of scripting the title matches and rights to use the footage. So has he cleared that up for everybody?
That is the most confusing way to say any of that. I'm still not exactly sure what he was trying to either correct or state. Let me talk to you about this, because you actually the only person here who has experience dealing with WWE, although under different management. giving you talent for those Six Flags shows. You always had big WWE stars. What were you allowed to do? What were you not allowed to do? What were you told to do by the office? Or, like, in this case, I guess it would be Gabe Sapolsky delivering a script, if that part was true.
Yeah, I've jotted down this 25-minute match I'd like to have the guy.
But yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
But all this, what you're hearing about this, or what you could decipher from what Dave is trying to say to what you actually experience with OVW.
Well, first of all, I've been on both sides of the fence because not only did I book, and a couple of different times, I booked talent in Smoky Mountain Wrestling. That was way long ago. But I booked their guys in OVW, but also, as we've talked about before, while I was up in Stamford, I was often tasked with booking the guys that were allowed to do third-party dates then. The underneath and middle card talent that weren't getting a lot of bookings could do extra work if it was approved by the office. We've told stories like that. So I've been on both sides of the fence. Since this probably more closely resembles an OVW type of situation than it does, when I was booking them in Smoky Mountain Wrestling. They didn't put any restrictions on me because they knew that I wasn't going to do anything stupid. And if I did suggest anything stupid, they had a pretty good idea that the talent wasn't going to want to do it. And they would probably change it. But when I would book the guys, when they would send talent from the WWE to Ohio Valley Wrestling for some time period because they were rehabbing an injury or to get them back in shape or to whatever, and they were going to be there for weeks and weeks and weeks, then they understood that in my ongoing television, I was probably going to have these guys do a job to the local guys, or at the local shows, I was going to have them do a job at some point if it fit my story. They didn't care, but that I wasn't going to do anything stupid and just have people wiping the mat with WWF at the time superstars, and that they were probably going to come out pretty good in the end because I'd want these guys to come back either as talent or trainers. So that was never an issue. Nobody ever bitched about anything on either side, talent or office, as I can recall, about the guys that were sent down here. Well, I mean, Mark Henry, when he first got here, still had the big head. It was well publicized. He complained about doing a personal appearance at like a fucking fair meeting or whatever, but he got straightened out. But as far as doing jobs or putting people over, no. And when I would book the top guys specifically, instead of the office sending them because they needed to work on a gimmick or rehab or whatever, once I approved having the talent, whoever it was on that date, I would, at the same time, actually, especially when I was dealing with Jim Ross, I would say, I wouldn't just say, give me Kane. I'd say, I want Kane to come down and work with Leviathan, Batista, or JR, especially. Laurinaitis is imbecile. But they knew that when I would ask for talent on the big show to draw, when we were doing the garden shows and we needed a major name, or the Six Flags show, I was going to figure out something for them that most fit in terms of helping one of their contracted developmental wrestlers. When we got a date on Chris Jericho at Six Flags, big main event, I put him with Johnny Jeter, who was the young blonde thrill seeker from 10 years before, right? So they could have a match. Both did that style. If we got Chris Benoit for the Gardens event in front of 5,000 people, that was going to be for the OVW title against Nick Dinsmore, because that's my technical wrestling wizard. When we had Stacy was working, we had the Disciples of Sin. I got the Hardys and Lita, because they're the 6-person tag. And the only time that the WWE ever changed any of the bookings that we did were when I had the Undertaker booked at the Last Dance at the Louisville Gardens, the last show before they closed down that time, with Leviathan. And I don't know why for sure, but suddenly it was either the morning of or the night before. It was JR and now, well, we're going to make it a tag team match. And they sent me Diamond Dallas Page, bless him, it came right down on short notice for free. And oh god damn it. Who was on the other side of the fence? I think for either Taker was either didn't want to get hurt before a big show they had coming up, or maybe had a nagging injury and didn't want to work a single match against Batista, who was greener than a pepper tree, or whatever, but to not disrupt my booking that we had featured as the main event of the show, they sent me two other guys, and Page was the one having the angle with Taker at the time because he was stalking Undertaker's wife or whatever. Do you remember some tomfoolery like that?
Sarah,
yeah, there
right?
you go.
Yeah.
So it was.
She's kind of been written out of history, hasn't she?
Apparently scrubbed off of the neck of history.
She's not going into the Hall of Fame.
No. No. But who was
off
the partner?
neck of history? It took me a second.
Yeah, it took since it was a depth charge. But it was, goddamn it, it was Leviathan and Page against Taker, and they sent me somebody else, but they made it a big tag match. Nobody was bad, but that was a change they make. But that was the thing. I would talk to I would ask for individual guys that were stars, not only that could draw money. We always had to have, for those garden shows that we were selling to Clear Channel Radio, we had to have the Steve Austin or the Undertaker or whatever.
Undertaker and Kane versus Leviathan and Dallas Page, 6/27/01.
Okay, then they gave me Kane back. Okay, and it made sense because earlier in the series we had Kane and Leviathan in a single match. But nevertheless, it's not like they fucked me around on that, was what I'm saying. So what I would do is I would get guys I knew could work with one of my featured talent, and they didn't have to worry about guys doing jobs on shows like that because you wanted to send the people home happy. And at the same time, yes, I did have some of the middle level WWF stars that came in on those shows, put my local guys over. But in the main event, most of the time, it would be preposterous and kind of seen by the fans as bullshit if the wrestling school champion had defeated the WWF champion. So we would figure out a way where it was more palatable for our local guy to lose and maybe blame one of our local guys going forward, that type of thing. JR didn't have to worry about fucking asking me about finishes. He knew there was not going to be an issue. And then, as I said, I'd go to the guys and explain to them briefly what we'd been doing with the local guy and what his gimmick was, what his personality was like, and some of the things people. And so that way, now I've tagged you in. You're the star. You're coming in here. Here's this kid. You know the drill. Help him out. And I didn't book guys on the show if I thought they were going to be pricks about it and not want to contribute. So, then I would hand it off to the professionals and they'd give me the fucking match. It was not but you can't do that with everybody, right, to be quite honest.
But the other thing too is you're talking about stars. In Smoky Mountain, you were sent stars. Shawn Michaels, Undertaker, Steiner Brothers, whoever it may be. In OVW, you were developmental, but you were sent stars. In this case, we're speaking about the opposite. Indie wrestlers or developmental talent, not stars. So, I mean, how would you react to that if you were being sent people that weren't necessary? Although I guess in some cases they may be indie stars, they may be indie draws, but you're not being sent the Undertaker, you're being sent the Underfaker, and here's the script. How would you react to that?
Well, okay, on the other side of it, because that's what I was doing with I wasn't, when I was booking talent in Stamford, yes, I'd book Steve Austin or Undertaker for autograph sessions at, major shopping malls. That was a big thing back then, and $25,000 payoffs and all that shit. But a lot of the underneath guys, headbangers, I've mentioned Road Dogg and Billy Gunn at one time before they found their angel. They weren't getting booked even on all the shows WWF was running. And they were valuable to the independent promoters. So if it was, a show in the Northeast or the Midwest or whatever, if they wanted to pay 500, 750 or $1,000, that was the range. Now that would be, 2,500 to whatever, 4 grand or whatever in today's money. But if they wanted to pay that guarantee, they could have some of these guys come in. Vince was allowing it. I was responsible for booking them because I'm the one who knew all the fucking responsible independent promoters were. They had a contract you had to sign. Basically, it was a booking contract, and you're going to give 10% of whatever the payoff to the talent is comes to the office for us facilitating this deal, right? And otherwise, again, JR put me in charge of it. We knew these were people that weren't going to do anything stupid. Nobody was going to be set on fire. There wasn't going to be a fucking barbed wire match. There was not going to be any goddamn, women being pile driven and, anal probed by aliens on a show. It's not going to make the newspapers for the wrong reasons. These people are promoters that have run multiple events for years, and it may be low budget. There's certainly a charm to it, but it's where the guys can work and get paid and not get hurt. And the WWF name's not going to be sullied in some kind of, believe it or not, that was a thing. You could actually get the WWF name dirty back then. And so it was Dennis Corluzzo, or it was a Blaine DeSantis in Reading, Pennsylvania, or Jimmy Kittner down in Delaware. Or, some of the guys in the Midwest. That's how I met Chris Daniels. And those guys, those local promoters that have been around for a while, before this hardcore, just whole indie style with furniture became a thing, they were presenting regular wrestling shows, and you could book the guys out. And from what I understand, after I left and came here to Louisville, they did it for a while longer. And then they had a couple of guys either didn't get their money or was on a show where somebody did something stupid, or somebody was a goddamn on some kind of watch list and it made the local paper, and they just said, okay, our guys can't wrestle anywhere else anymore because it was a pain in the ass. Well, what was the question?
Well, I guess going back,
how would I take it?
Yeah, well, going back to the actual story here, and again, I'm a little confused based on what you read that Dave wrote on exactly what he is saying.
There are no scripts for matches. It's ridiculous. And I can see if here's what I would think would be a legitimate level of control that the WWE would have in this. Because since we don't know what the fuck is going on, how about we just talk about what should be going on? If the WWE is subsidizing these guys' careers for what we talked about earlier, they make extra money. They don't have to worry about paying bills. So yes, they can go to the gym more often, but they don't have to wait tables at Chili's or whatever. And if they're giving them some kind of money in return for going out and getting more experience and figuring out who they are and coming up with a gimmick, or just learning. And here, because eventually, if you get better, maybe we'll bring you in the system. And by the way, you can't go anywhere else unless we say you can, or whatever. We're not just going to, Johnny Appleseed the whole wrestling business for free. We get you if you turn out good, or we can say, no, we don't want you, and then be free and fly away. I would think that would be the deal. And for that, depending on what the office's issues are with what's been raised in meetings, they don't want these guys potentially beating up women, maybe intergender matches. Might that be out? Because, well, oh golly, Paulina fucking Smith got dropped on her head in Cherry Hill, New Jersey the other night by a guy on a pro wrestling show, and she's in a wheelchair. Oh, this guy's signed to the WWE. They don't want shit like that. So I would think there would be some level of concerned with who they're working with or what kind of show is it? Is it the fucking Insane Clown Posse show where they all roll around in fucking barbed wire in a goddamn field of mud and drunken on psychedelics and woo energy drink? Maybe you don't want your talent in that environment, or just somebody that's not going to in any way bring shame or disfavor any more than has already been done by its former chairman on a name, or get the talent that they're investing money in hurt, or just pictures of them doing really stupid things. I doubt they'll be drinking blood or having hypodermic needles stuck through their faces. I think that's reasonable. I don't think they care whether these guys do jobs or not, unless, as they said, they establish some kind of championship. And I think that's stretching it a little bit. I don't know, but maybe they've got a grand plan. And Gabe knows what he's doing with Gabe has been involved in running the booking of a wrestling promotion on a shoestring budget. So he knows how to deal with local outfits and trying to cater to people as best they can when they're trying to sell every 10 tickets they can sell. And he likes dealing with young talent, but I'm sure he will impress on all of them. Don't do anything stupid, don't get hurt, and go out and learn the right things and the right skills and the right way to deal with things. But there's not match scripts where, so and so grabs that headlock. That doesn't happen anyway.
Well, we shall see what happens, or at least hear about it. I don't know how much we're going to see, but we'll hear about what happens. And I mean, at the end of the day, I really believe all this stuff, a lot of it's about just WWE doing what they can for future talent, but I think a lot of it's just about shutting AEW out of everything. And I think,
okay,
WWE is doing a masterful job, and Tony doesn't know how to fight back. WWE is shutting Tony out of access to just about everything, whether it's podcasts that have suddenly gone WWE friendly because WWE is being really friendly to them, or whether it's independent promotions being locked up, or schools or talent. So much of this is about, there's a billionaire competitor, let's make it so he can't have access to any talent or any assets.
I would expand that, what you just said. Instead of, controlling AEW, it's controlling everybody.
The industry, controlling the industry.
The industry. And the thing is, I don't think they want to play with Tony anyway, and they know that he's too petulant of a man-child to play with them. But they've already got a deal going with TNA, where TNA is clearly, and it's helped TNA's business, from what we understand, exceptionally. We may watch one of those here sooner or later. But it's clear that TNA is the little brother, and they're fine with that because everybody's benefiting. And they've made deals with where every deal they make is where everybody's the little brother. And I'm sure, with the level of legal power that they've got, legal minds behind them, et cetera, that the contracts are all written very well. The WWE's in charge of these relationships, but as long as they're beneficial to the other party, there's no reason why they shouldn't have them. But Tony ain't going to give up. He's not going to be anybody's little brother. And he's never going to admit publicly that, yes, we need you. Or that we want to engage in some kind of goddamn deal where we look subservient to you and we feature your smaller stars like bigger stars, or thing like that. So they're just shutting him out. But everybody's either under the thumb or down the drain. And with the money they've got and the fucking reach they've got and the ability now to take it, Vince just didn't want to fuck with it. Except for me, Paul, and Lawler are the three companies that he acknowledged, right? Memphis Wrestling, Smoky Mountain, and ECW.
Yeah.
he didn't want to fuck with anything else. He didn't give a shit. He owned wrestling, and why
Well,
fucking bother with acknowledging
well,
the
actually,
rest of it?
let me change that. He acknowledged Smoky Mountain Wrestling and ECW. Other than maybe a passing mention, like in the Royal Rumble, USWA was never mentioned.
Well, he worked on Lawler's shows and had some fun down there, and they didn't beat it to death. They traded more talent than they did mentioning the promotion. But the King of Memphis, everybody got the fucking gist. But he did that for Lawler. But the point is now, instead of just having a hard rule, we don't work with anybody, and except maybe somebody internationally, and just fuck it, ignore everybody else. TKO is like, okay, how can we either make everyone else subservient to us, our little brother, establish a pecking order, look beneficent in order to avoid any antitrust actions of a legitimate kind, open ourselves up to a much wider net of talent that we can cast out and snatch in, and shut off the only competitor that, even though there's no competition, we know that they're not going to play with us, and this idiot's going to overpay talent for years to come. So we need to shut him off at the fucking OK Corral. And they run everything in one way or another. They either run or influence every outlet there is for this shit. Except ours. We're still going to be independent.
That's right.
But does that sound reasonable? What I just said to you there?
I think so, but I think shutting down AEW is a priority. Or I shouldn't say a priority. I think it's something they want. Maybe not a priority, but they're hoping the things they do what ended every wrestling war. Cut off talent. That's it. That's what ended the Georgia war. They couldn't get any more talent. They had the same talent they had 2 years earlier, and people were done.
Yeah.
And Georgia had nothing but fresh young talent and a good booker.
Well, but also think about this now. Here's something else they can do besides cut off talent. They can make him spend money he doesn't have to spend. They can cost him money he would have taken in.
But he doesn't care. But he's the first guy that doesn't care because the bottom line is not what matters.
Well, I know, but at some point, see, I'm not saying it's their number one priority and it's this big high pressure tactic, because there's these people going, oh, God, they're trying to, when they schedule a WWE event against AEW's pay-per-view or go to the same town beforehand or whatever, you know the drill with the scheduling.
Oh, yeah, the Saturday night's main event against All In Texas.
Against All In Texas. And boy, they're going to be all in. You know what? They ought to have the same 10 fans run around the stadium over and over until they're all in. But anyway, they're not going to just make this their life's mission, but where they can, they're going to make Tony spend more money, because that's what Tony is doing to them, or has done, or is trying to do to them. Tony is willing to pay the fucking boys, and even the wrong ones, especially, multi-millions of dollars to not produce anything and just be part of his bad wrestling show. And that's where either the guys are going to retire, or the young guys are seduced by this and are willing to willing to donate the rest of their career to medical science to go on a shitty program because they're making millions of dollars. But the WWE as a business, I would think, does not want this fucking lunatic just throwing money around like a drunken sailor, because it does upset. And of course, the WWE could certainly afford to compensate its wrestling talent more than it does. But that's another story. As a business, what I'm telling you, hear me what I'm telling you, is that the WWE is pissed off because this guy is spending a fucking fortune and driving all the salaries up. And then not only that, but the fact that it's a rotten program. It's not that that AEW is succeeding in taking viewers away from WWE. It's that AEW, as long as it exists, will cost WWE more money in the amount of money they potentially would have to pay fucking talent if Tony takes a fancy to him. I think that's why they're trying to get these young guys under retainer, so to speak, before that they catch Tony's radar, because that's the problem. It's not that this is not a wrestling war in terms of AEW is going to damage WWE's attendance or put them out of business or outdraw them in Pittsburgh or whatever the fuck. It's that Tony is willing to pay a fortune for these people. It ain't halfway worth it.
Tony can raise the pay scale industry-wide just by doing it.
Yes. So imagine I hate to say this, but if Gunther, I hope that this doesn't happen, but if Gunther, goddamn, his contract was about to come up and Tony would pay him $5 million a year to work one day a fucking week, I bet he'd do it.
$5 million a year, and I'll fly you back and forth to Austria as much as you want. I mean, that's the kind of thing. But let me ask you this, because we've gone on a while and we have other things we have to talk about. So let me end with a question here that will refer to something later. And we'll return to this conversation. If you're WWE, what really worries you right this second? Is it Tony Khan increasing everyone's pay, which, it only takes one dumb owner in like baseball to offer a stupid contract. The next thing you know, like every first baseman's making ridiculous money. Tony can kind of do that. It's him against WWE. But if you're WWE, are you more worried about that or more worried about the actual content at times that he's putting on TV? And if, Jerry Jarrett got hurt because of footage the Sheik had on TV.
Yeah.
Again, it's a different animal today, but would you be more worried about the negative connotation, would you be more concerned about how negative wrestling looks because of stuff like the Moxley match and that spot specifically than about the pay scale issues? That you have an outlaw promoter in a lot of ways because he'll just do anything.
If I am the WWE, because they're strictly cold-hearted businessmen, I'm more concerned about him upsetting the pay scale, and I'm happy that he did the fucking spike in the back or he does the bleach or whatever, because they are so much farther above everybody now that they can differentiate. It's the same thing as, are you going to see the Rolling Stones or are you going to see some punk band at a local fucking bar that used to be a garage?
I'll go there. I'll take option B, and I love the Stones.
Well, I know that, but you know what I'm saying. They can differentiate from, you can take your kids to see the Rolling Stones. And nobody's going to be fucking stabbed on the fucking dance floor or whatever. It's not 1969 anymore. But I think that I would be more upset if I was WWE. I'm offended as a wrestling purist and traditionalist, and with some respect for the industry and the art form. I'm offended more by the garbage wrestling, but I think WWE be offended more by them costing them millions of dollars they probably wouldn't have had to pay if it weren't for this fucking guy. So that's my thought. But you know what the problem is, Brian?
What?
None of them have enough protein. They're all
none of who?
They're all lacking in the protein. Who are we just talking about?
Tony Khan, wrestlers, WWE.
Yes, they all need more protein, and this would be solved because if they had more protein, they'd feel better. They'd be in better health. They would be able to be kind to their neighbors, and everyone would become a friend. There'd be no competition. They'd all be singing Kumbaya. We'd be one race. Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try, but there's Orgain right in front of us. And this podcast is sponsored by folks at Orgain who believe real nutrition has the power to make a real difference in people's real lives. And that's why we can save you real money, folks, on the Orgain 30-gram complete protein shakes that offer the protein-packed real nutrition it's designed to satisfy your cravings, your hungers, your fetishes, your predilections, without any of the added sugar. There's plenty of protein in this because that builds the muscles and the various sinewy tendons. But you know what the sugar does, don't you, Brian? It leads to furniture disease.
What?
That's where your chest is down in your drawers. You got too much of that sugar. So I'm telling you what, they're also the protein in the Orgain 30-gram complete protein shakes that are, by the way, delicious, like a chocolate milkshake, but suddenly gone on a health kick. You can't tell the difference, but it's good for you. It's ultra filtered protein with all 9 of the essential amino acids. And you can't just go with 5 or 6 anymore. In today's world, you got to have all 9. So whether you're wanting muscle support and recovery, looking to maintain a healthy lifestyle, all you got to do is shake one of these babies up. That's why they call it a shake. And you pop the top and you just goozle it down. Be careful now because you will leave somewhat of a chocolate ice cream ring around your mouth. If you got to wipe after you drink before you go into the business meeting. Because it's a product for people with a hurry scurry lifestyle, Brian, that are on the go all the time. And you might be droopy. You might be wearing out, and you might say, I just need some protein. And like Popeye with its spinach, you do that in the car, and then you go in and you close another deal, Brian. You sell another account. You beat the other guy. You triumph over the competition. You send the guy that you triumphed over out in the street, wandering around in the gutter where he's broke and jobless, wondering what his future is. How can he go home and tell his wife and children that he's a failure and that he can't support them or feed them, and that she's going to have to turn to some type of prostitution or illegal sexual activity? And the kids, well, they're probably going to an orphanage. That's the kind of satisfaction you're going to get, folks, with an Orgain 30-gram protein shake.
Well, what kind of no, I don't even want you to repeat any of that. The satisfaction you will get from Orgain, and I can tell you as someone who proudly every single day drinks my Orgain, and someone who works out and loves my Orgain, you will love your Orgain. It's delicious. It is the best tasting protein shake I've ever had in my entire life, and I love it. You will love it too. They tell us to push the chocolate. The vanilla is something that Suzanne and the kids like.
Oh,
Orgain.
Yeah. And you are true. It is the best tasting protein shake ever. But I don't know if I would go as far as when you say everyone loves my Orgain. I don't know about that.
I did not say that.
Well, whether it's the protein powders or the bars or the shakes or the various disseminations, all of the stuff that's ejaculated all over by the Orgain family, you can go right now to Orgain.com, ORGAIN.com/Jim, and use the promo code Jim. You're going to get 30% off your order. And remember, folks, again, there's no quick fixes when it comes to your health. You got to get on a routine, and you got to stay there. You got to dedicate yourself. You got to start sucking down the Orgains. You got to hit the bricks and do the jogging. You got to engage in all kinds of cosmetic surgery before it's too late. If I were you, I'd get everything cut off and just start over again. But right now, Orgain's a good way to dip your toe in the water. Orgain.com/Jim. Use the code Jim for 30% off your order. 30 big percent, 30 at Orgain.